Hi, Lynton here, and this is Sketch and Tell. This is part of my series on colours of life, and the colour that I want to explore today is yellow. Like all the colours can be hard to pin down to just one symbol. Yellow is probably the most difficult. It sends out a whole lot of mixed messages. It can be the colour for life, for pulsating life. But it can also be the colour for bile, something pretty horrible. It could be the colour that you paint halos, golden halos, around saints or angels. But it also is the colour that artists have used to paint the sulphurous devil. In certain cultures, yellow is the colour for power. But it also can be the colour for declining power. When you think of leaves on a tree during autumn, particularly in our street, as they lose their life and drop off, they are yellow. But the symbol that I want to think about as it relates to our lives and the challenges that we face in life is yellow, standing for fear, cowardice. Now, I want to do this in a fun way. I don't want to sort of be too heavy about this. So I thought, what would be the most fearsome, scariest creature that I would not want to meet in Australia? And you'd be right in coming up with a list, because in Australia we have a whole lot of different animals and creatures and insects that are out to get us. We've got crocodiles, we've got great white sharks, we've got jellyfish in the ocean. We've got venomous snakes, we've got insects, all sorts of things that you would not want to meet in their territory or in the dark. But the one creature that really is on the top of my list of animals, creatures to be feared in Australia is the bunyip. Now, I could already hear you laughing or going, what? But let me explain. The bunyip, of course, is that large mythical creature from Aboriginal stories that lurked in swamps and billabongs and creeks, and it instilled fear and dread for a long, long time. In fact, it was the word that was translated often as devil or evil spirit. And as the early Europeans came to Australia and they started to venture out into this wild country of Australia, so different from Europe. The seasons are different, the landscape is different, the trees are different, the creatures are so different. The one creature that they feared the most was the bunyip. And to make matters worse, they could never capture one and get a good look at it. Yes, there were sightings of bunyips, and there are some very interesting sketches and drawings of what a bunyip perhaps looked like. Some people drew it as a sort of a snake-like creature, some drew it as a very large, almost like a big hairy dinosaur, wombat creature, some had it as a large dog-like creature. In fact, they found a skull with one eye socket, and that was housed in the Sydney Museum for a long time until they realised that this skull was probably from a deformed cow. But no one really could say for certain this is what the bunyip looks like or is. So before we get into a little bit of that, let's have some fun and let's draw our own mythical bunyip. So if you want to grab your pastels, your pencils, let's use our imagination and come up with a supposed scary bunyip. Now, when I draw something just out of my head, I kind of like to break it down into shapes. So first of all, I'm thinking of the body, and I'm going to have my body kind of like an egg shape. Now, you could have it standing upright on two legs if you want it. I'm going to have mine on all fours. You could have your body long and skinny, like a snake. You could have it triangle shape. You could have it any shape you like. But it's good just to start with that shape. And then I'm just going to use predominantly the yellow colour, because we are thinking yellow, standing for fear. And I'm going to start to cover that body with some texture. What would the bunyip be covered in? Scales, slime, feathers, spikes. I'm going to kind of think of hair, spiky hair. And so just using my pastel and the colour yellow, I'm going to quickly cover the body with that kind of texture. But then I'm going to mix my yellow with the two other primary colours, and if you mix yellow with red, of course you come up with orange. And I always mix at least three colours together when I'm doing any sort of surface. So I'm going to mix some orange in there and a little bit up here. Yeah, it just creates that interest in whatever area you're painting to have a blend of colours. And if you mix yellow with blue, the other primary colour, you come up with green. I'm going to put some green in here because I'm thinking the bunyip lives in swamps and waterholes, so it's probably going to have a bit of slime on the fur, so we'll put a little bit of green there. And I'm also going to use a darker green just for some of that shading underneath, where again we get that contrast of light and shade. Light on the top and a bit of shade down the bottom. And as I'm doing this, I'm now thinking of the back legs. And you can sort of play around. It's like sort of mix and match here. You can have legs that are stumpy, maybe like a wombat. You could have long legs, which I'm going to put on my bunyip. Kind of a cross between kangaroo and emu legs. But you might like to go for legs that are more like a human, hairy human legs, and put those on your bunyip. So we'll just put these down here, and I'll have some long toes with some claws on the end, and I'll have the other leg kind of over this side over here. And again, I want to continue the colour down, so we'll have some of that yellow coming down into the leg. We'll have a bit of hair sort of out the back, and then we'll just sort of colour that. And I might use again the orange, again just to mix it in, just to create a bit of that shape for the leg. And we'll put the orange down here and keep the orange over there, and I'll use some of that darker green or lighter green first, and then some of the darker green to just create a little bit of that moulding of the leg down here. Okay, then we come to the tail, and I'm going to, again, you can use like a kangaroo tail, you can have a curly tail, a feather tail. I'm going to go more for a kind of like a lizard tail, so we'll have the tail sort of out the back here and down on the ground, and using that yellow again just to blend down, come to a point, put a little bit of orange in, and a little bit of that darker green. Now I'm already thinking about the front paws. You could have again long front forelegs, but I'm going to have like little claw appendages like you might find on a dinosaur. So I'm going to just have these here, put some claws there, and we'll have the other one just out there like that. Quickly colour it in with some yellow and green, and then we'll move on to the head. Now with the head, I'm going to just put a little bit of a neck here, and then the head I will just kind of put another egg shape. We'll have an egg shape like that, and we'll have the eye that sits there. And then I'm going to quickly cover that again with the yellow spiky hair, and think about the ears and the nose, which are probably the two most important parts of the head. Again, for ears you can have sort of floppy ears, you can have round ears, you can have spiky ears, which is the way I'm going to go. So we'll just put the ears kind of like, almost like bilby ears. So I'll put that there, and colour it in. Have a little bit of hair on it. For the eye, you can have any colour you like. You can have blue eye, but that might be too cute and nice for a bunyip. I'm going to go for a red coloured eye, which is right here like this. Then we'll put a little gleam in the eye. And then I think about the nose. You could have a nose that looks like a crocodile snout. You could have a nose that looks like a blunted nose, like a snake with a forked tongue coming out. You could have a human sort of nose, whereas I'm going to go for a beak. I think that's the way. I'll just sort of plonk this out and have it nice and sharp. And I'll colour it in with a bit of orange. And a little bit of yellow here. And just to finish off, of course, being a bunyip, we're going to have to just have some little bits of blood. So I'll just have a little bit of blood sort of dripping off here. Have some bits of blood off the claws and off the toes here. We're just having a little bit of fun here. I hope that your bunyip looks good and scary and reminds us that we are thinking of a mythical creature that no one's really been able to photograph or capture or pin down. Now, whether a bunyip really exists or not, I've got my thoughts about that, but primarily I want to go in a different direction, and that is that when we are thinking about myths, we're not thinking about imaginary fairy tales that people have made up just to entertain. Nor are we thinking about if someone just having wild imaginations and creating creatures like the bunyip. These creatures like the bunyip, like any good myth, are actually pointing to and symbolising a deeper reality that we all, whatever culture we come from, whatever age we're in, find ourselves at. There are things in life that we face, all have to deal with. And I think, for me, the bunyip is our Australian symbol for fear, for facing fears. Fears are a part of life, whatever age we are. If we're children, our deep fears are of darkness and of the unknown. We're also afraid as children of being abandoned by our caregivers, our parents. As we grow older, as we're teens, as we're young people, our fears kind of change. They're more, we fear of being ridiculed. We fear of rejection from our peers and our friends. We fear that we're not going to be liked. As we get a bit older, as adults, we have a different range of fears. Our fears are facing change, facing failure, facing loss of control, facing shame. We fear as we get older, towards the end of our life, of losing things, losing our health and losing our wealth, losing our security, and perhaps even losing our own lives. And of course, with COVID-19, There's a whole truckload of fears that are kind of parked in our front yard as we look into the future, the changes that could be and how are we going to face those. Now, I need to say that there are healthy fears in life. Not all fears are bad. But when I think of healthy fears, I'm usually thinking of things that we need to respect and value. So I have a healthy fear of life, of my life. I don't want to put my hand into a fire. As attractive as that might seem, it's not going to be good for me. I have a healthy fear and respect for others. When I'm riding my motorbike at high speed on the roads, I want to not only respect and value my own life, but I also want to respect the others who are using that road as well. And I value others, not just myself. When I think of fear, there's also a healthy fear of God. It's not a cringing, life-debilitating fear. It's a healthy fear for me. Life is a gift. I only have one life to live, and I want to live it well. I want to please God in all I do. I want to make a difference in this world where I find myself. And so there's a healthy fear there in the choices that I make and the actions that I do. But when it comes to unhealthy fears, we're thinking of those bunyips, symbolizing fears that sit on our shoulder and whisper in our ears. When we're called to face challenges in life that are part of growing up. When we're called to stand up and try something maybe new. When we're called to a role of leadership. When we have an inner call to do the right thing. Or to give of ourselves to help someone else, to do something that is good. When we're facing challenges and opposition, when there's changes, when there's something new, all those little bunyips are sitting on our shoulder, whispering in our ear, failure, rejection, you're no good, you can't do this. If we listen to those bunyips, they will grow. We're feeding them in our imagination. It's kind of like when those early Europeans were out in the bush, unknown places to them, foreign in so many ways. The night is falling, they're camped by a billabong, and they start to hear noises. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard possums fighting in the night, or koalas screaming out, but they are fearsome noises. And if you let those imaginations run wild, you could imagine all sorts of creatures lurking in the billabongs. But it was striking, I guess, to that inner, deeper fear of theirs that they were feeling very vulnerable and out of control in the place that they were in, this new place. And so as we move into new places, into new ventures, into new challenges that are good ones, I use my imagination in a positive way. The fears are always going to be there. Those little voices are always going to be there. But I use my imagination in a positive way, and I think of the fact that for 366 times in the Bible, God promises to different people, men and women, adults and children, young and old. The promise is, do not be afraid, do not fear, for I am with you. For me to face my fears, yes, it's appropriate to share those with a trusted friend. It's not a weakness to do that. But I also share them inwardly with someone who's bigger than my fears, someone who's more loving and life-giving than those bunyips. And for me, that is God. In closing, I just want to say, when I first stepped out to do art and storytelling live in front of different groups and settings, going into prisons, going into schools, going into all sorts of community groups, going into open spaces. For me, I really was motivated because I really sensed for me this was a calling. This is what God was calling me to do, to share the things that I really wanted to share with people, but do it through art and storytelling. But at a natural level, I was afraid because I'm not a good speaker. And I came up with all these excuses. There are people who are much better at talking than I am, who are much more gifted, more eloquent, more charismatic. And what if I'm doing my painting and I don't do it perfectly, as always? They're never perfect, but won't people reject me or reject my painting or laugh at me or ridicule me? Those were the bunyips that I have to deal with, and I still do every time I venture out into a new space or a new place with a new group of people. But inwardly, I just say, God, help me. You are bigger and better. And with you, I can have courage. I can have that inner strength. And I can give of myself, and I can really kind of share love with people instead of just thinking about my fears and letting it cripple me. Thank you very much, and have a colourful day.